It does not matter what type of format you play in. Best ball, redraft, dynasty. The key to success is having a few guys that are safe that you can trust every single week, and then sprinkle in a little bit of upside to help take you to a fantasy championship. Headliner Nation, I have got some massive play wide receivers with massive upside for you in 2023. And there are going to be some names on this list that absolutely shock you. So hit the like button and stay tuned because you are going to want to see the information I have. But speaking of massive plays, if you're going to be playing best ball this year, you've got to head over to Underdog and sign up with code word headliners. When you do that, Underdog is going to match your deposit up to $100. And if you deposit at least $10, you're gonna get a free draft guide from us. Our draft guide is $21.99, so essentially you're getting it for more than 50% off by doing that. And these guys that we're gonna be talking about today are perfect for your best ball lineups. So head on over to Underdog now and sign up with code headliners. All right, the guys I'm gonna be talking about today are based on their performance on targets that were 20 or more yards down the field. And I went with the guys that had at least 20 of those targets. So when you take a look at the leaders in terms of targets 20 or more yards down the field, seeing a guy like Tyreek Hill at the top is no surprise to anybody. And of course, Davante Adams probably isn't as well. But George Pickens? And then a guy like DJ Moore tied with him as well? I don't think anybody out there realized how often these guys were looked at down the field last year. And then you got a guy like Allen Lazard at number 7. You've got Christian Watson, a better deep threat, playing on the other side, and you still had this many targets in the deep passing game. Will be interesting to see what he does this year with Aaron Rodgers in New York. Okay, the targets are great, but how many of these targets were actually caught? Tyreek Hill again leads the way, but Justin Jefferson, who was 8th in targets, was 2nd in reception. So frankly, he did a lot more with a lot less than some of these other guys. But then George Pickens and DJ Moore, not only top 5 in targets, but top 5 in receptions, 20 or more yards down the field. And then I hate to see guys at the bottom of the list like Chris Olave and Deontay Johnson, because even though they had decent targets down the field, they didn't catch nearly enough of them. Yes, some of that can be contributed to quarterback play. But when you see a guy like George Pickens that went down the field so successfully, and then Deontay Johnson, who was on the same team but did not, that raises some concerns. George Pickens would be the deep threat on this team. It is not going to be Deontay Johnson. All right, what about receiving yards on targets 20 or more yards down the field? Every single guy you see at the top of the list right now is an absolute no-brainer in fantasy. But then again, at number 5, George Pickens steps up here again. So what are we doing with George Pickens? Because these numbers right here show me that there is a lot of potential this year with him, especially if we see the run game healthy and active with Najee Harris. And then I mentioned it a minute ago with a guy like Allen Lazard. A lot of targets, but then the receptions dropped, and then the receiving yards dropped as well. So even though he was targeted, he didn't do a whole lot with them. Chris Olave as well, but we're going to talk a little bit more about him in just a minute. All right, touchdowns on those targets, 20 or more yards down the field. Again, the top 4 or 5 names here are no surprise to you. DJ Moore ties STEFON Diggs for 4 touchdowns, 20 or more yards down the field. Again, in an offense that was kind of at best last season, inconsistent at the quarterback position, and loved to run the football, it was good to see him being a deep threat. Does that carry over to Chicago? Because I would be willing to gamble that he's a better deep threat in Chicago than he was last year in Carolina. And then you see Justin Jefferson down on this list with only 1 touchdown. Now, obviously, it doesn't matter too much. He had the receptions, he had the yards, he had the touchdowns outside of this. But I would love to see this season, maybe Justin Jefferson finishing a few of those big plays instead of getting into the red zone and looking to somebody else. All right, yards per route run. And what this means for those of you that don't know is on those targets that were 20 or more yards down the field, for every route that they ran on those targets, this is how many yards they averaged. And again, top fantasy performers, A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, right here at the top. But then you've got a guy that sneaks in here in 4th place. Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy is becoming a guy this offseason that I really feel like has a lot of breakout potential. If this Denver Broncos offense can bounce back and Russell Wilson can go back to being the guy that he was in Seattle. And then a guy like Amari Cooper, floated right around 16th in targets, 11th in receptions, but then you see his number jump up to 8th place here. So while he didn't get many looks down the field, when he did a decent amount with it. All right, average depth of target. So when those targets came 20 or more yards down the field, where exactly were the targets landing? And it's good to see Chris Olave leading the pack here. Now, obviously, this didn't mean much because it didn't turn into much for fantasy production. But again, I'm going to talk about that more in just a second. If you watched my efficiency video on wide receivers last week, then you remember me talking about Terry McLaurin as kind of being a sneaky option that popped up in some of those stats. And now he goes top 5 in terms of average depth of target, which is crazy to think because the speedster Jahan Dotson is on the other side of him. So can Sam Howell be able to target both of these guys down the field? This shows me right here that Terry McLaurin is a really complete wide receiver. How about Justin Jefferson ranking dead last in this category? But again, it did not matter because then when you jump over to yards after the catch per reception, on those targets, even though they weren't very deep, he was 4th in yards after the catch per reception. So you knew that he was going to pick up extra yards regardless of where he got those targets. And how about Jerry Jeudy, number 1 overall in this category? Just another reason I'm really liking potential Jerry Jeudy breakout this year. All right, what about contested catches? And I always like looking at this stat because it shows me what wide receivers can really battle for the football. And that is good in a situation where you have a quarterback that may not have the best accuracy in the world. Allen Lazard was number 1, and of course he's got Aaron Rodgers, so we're not worried about his accuracy, but George Pickens at number 2. So even with Kenny Pickett, if you're worried about him this year, we know George Pickens is able to go up and battle for the football. Terry McLaurin as well shows up here, and this is just another reason why I believe he is a complete wide receiver. He is really good underneath. He has a great route tree. He can contest catches down the field. He can battle for those balls, and we know he's a deep threat as well. All right, just like some of my other videos that I've done recently, I'm going to fly through some of these wide receivers as I averaged out their finishing position in each of these categories to look and see who is the best deep threat in football last year. A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Justin Jefferson lead the way, and there's really not a whole lot that I need to say about any of these guys because they're top fantasy producers and we're drafting them as such. But then you got a guy like George Pickens popping up here, and if Kenny Pickett is able to grow this year, George Pickens is going to be a very valuable deep threat because again, if Najee Harris can be healthy and they can utilize him in the run game and really solidify that, you've got Deontay Johnson and Pat Freiermuth who can work underneath in the middle of the field to leave Pickens in a lot of one-on-one matchups. Stefon Diggs, you don't really look at him as the deep threat in Buffalo. That's Gabe Davis, but Stefon Diggs shows that he can do anything you need him to. How about DJ Moore finishing so high on the list? It's crazy to think that he was so good down the field last year because he played in such an anemic offense with inconsistent play at the quarterback position. And y'all can say I'm passing on DJ Moore as much as you want to because you don't like the quarterback. Is Justin Fields not better than what he had last season? I don't care how much they ran the football. They can run the football the same amount this year. And if you have just great efficiency with DJ Moore, he's going to be well worth the pick at his given ADP. Listen, Mike Evans is popping up on this list. He does every year. But with the change at the quarterback position, I am really hesitant that he will be able to do this type of playmaking again in 2023. Jerry Jeudy and Terry McLaurin, obviously not high finishes across the board, but high finishes in some individual statistics. That tells us the opportunity is there. Jerry Jeudy breakout, Terry McLaurin bounce back. Both could happen this year. Gabe Davis, we know he is a deep threat, and hopefully if Josh Allen can stay healthy all year and not have the elbow issue like he did last year. And Gabe Davis, who got beat up early in the season with an ankle injury that affected him for a few weeks. These two should connect on some big plays again. Allen Lazard is not a true deep threat, so to even see him on this list is crazy. But if you think about it, in this New York offense now this year, knowing that Lazard has chemistry for Aaron Rodgers, this might not be great news for Allen Lazard, but seeing him on this list and seeing that Aaron Rodgers was willing to go down the field with him only helps us look at Garrett Wilson a little bit easier and say, hey, if Allen Lazard is going to be stretching the field and helping stretch the field, hopefully that leaves Garrett Wilson with a lot of room to operate over the middle. Listen, CeeDee Lamb being lower on the list doesn't concern me. In fact, I don't even want to see him on this list because his best position is in the slot where he can utilize his great route running and explosiveness to create yards after the play and then let guys like Michael Gallup and Brandon Cooks stretch the field. Let's get there in 2023 because then CeeDee Lamb, honestly, if he's utilized correctly, should be just like Cooper Kupp. Now look, a lot of people are hoping for a Chris Olave breakout, and here at the Fantasy Headliners, we really like him. So seeing him finish this far on the list is going to cause a shock to a lot of people. But keep something in mind, someone that is higher up on the list, Davante Adams, who was his quarterback last year? Derek Carr, who is now Chris Olave's quarterback. You might not like Derek Carr. You might think he's inconsistent. You might not like him as a quarterback or whatever it may be. But he went down the field consistently to Davante Adams last year. We know Michael Thomas is not that guy. Who's going to be that guy? Chris Olave. Is he going to have a Davante Adams-like season? Absolutely not. But big breakout potential is absolutely going to be there because Chris Olave is hopefully going to fill the Davante Adams role for Derek Carr. Amari Cooper and Diontae Johnson. Honestly, them finishing lower on the list doesn't concern me at all, and it actually surprised me that they were on here. But neither of those guys are your traditional deep threats anyway. Both of these guys use their route tree and work the middle and the sidelines better than anybody in the league. Hopefully the volume will be there for them this year. Amari Cooper is going to have Donovan Peoples-Jones and Elijah Moore to help out there. Diontae Johnson, we've already talked about George Pickens. So even though the big plays might not be there, these might be guys that we look at as actually being safer bets instead of massive upside. And then I'm sorry to say, Marquise Brown, you're going to be in potentially the worst offense in the league this year that is probably not going to push the ball down the field very well. It will surprise me if he pops up here this coming year, and honestly, knowing the offense he's going to be in, I'm not excited for his upside anyway. Yo, Headliner Nation, if you appreciate the video and the content I just threw out to you, hit the like button for me and subscribe to the channel because this video right here are the types of things that win you your leagues. And leave me a comment down below and let me know what wide receiver that I talked about today have you opened your eyes to and you are now looking at potentially grabbing this year. Headliner Nation, I'm going to head out. Peace out, stay safe and healthy, and I'll catch y'all on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.